I want to welcome all of you to the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors and School Board Candidates Forum. This forum has 5 co-sponsors with the League of Women Voters, and they are the Montgomery County, Radford City, Floyd County branch of NAACP, the New River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and the News Messenger. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, there are a few announcements I'd like to make. This forum is being videotaped by a county videographer. The video will be available on YouTube with a link, and I believe you have information about that link in your candidate forum instructions. It's www.lwmcva.org, and it will be replayed on the county's local Access TV channel 190. The forum guidelines and voter guides for the Board of Supervisors and School Board have been distributed to the audience. Copies of the voter guides will be on our website. Paper copies of the voter guides for Montgomery County candidates are in the public libraries. The voter guides for Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Attorney General and candidates for the House of Delegates are also on a website, vote411.org. But again, that information is in your forum guidelines. There have been a number of changes in the panel over the last several days and even into the last several hours. Gary Creed, the incumbent from District C, informed us on Monday that he would be unable to participate in the forum. The league rules are ambiguous, and only in the last 30 minutes it has been determined, after consultation with some of the state officers, to allow Taysom Newell, the Democrat running for the Board of Supervisors from District C against Mr. Creed, to be a part of this panel and this discussion. There are a number of candidates who are running unopposed, and I would ask them to stand. Gideon Kiran is running for the school board without opposition from District A. I don't believe Annette is here, Annette Perkins. In addition, there are 3 candidates who have indicated that they are write-in candidates for the school board from District C. I saw 2 of them and would ask Joey Lyons if he would stand, and also Sherry Lunsford. Thank you very much. We are going to encourage all of you to submit questions. I've already received a number. Each question will be asked of all of the candidates. Our helpers out there with the badges have index cards that you can write your questions down. They will collect them, and the screeners on my left will review them, mostly for duplication, and pass them on to me. It would be helpful if you would indicate whether the question that you raise is for candidates for the school board or candidates for the Board of Supervisors, or both. I'd like to introduce the screeners at this time. They're Allison Wilson, Carol Linker, and Ann Hess at this table. And our timers are Phyllis Albritton and Sue Bentley. I would ask all of you, if you have not turned off your cell phones and other items that you use for communication, to please do so, and also ask members of the audience to reserve your applause until the end of the forum. Again, with the write-in candidates, I know that they will likely stay around after the meeting and be happy to visit with anybody who would like to ask them questions. I'd now like to introduce the candidates who are seated by office. To my right, we have, first of all, Michael Miller, and then Todd King. And we did not know until several minutes ago whether Jim Politis would be here or not. He has been in a hospital, was being released, and there was some thought that he would be here. This has been an amazing experience, folks. And Tacey, of course, has joined us as a candidate from District C. And on my left, we had expected to have two candidates. There's one here this evening, and that is the person running against the incumbent, and it's Tom Zuckerwar. So with that, the process that we go through here, I will ask the questions. I'll try to rotate them if I can keep straight who I've asked the last question to. You have 1 minute to respond to the question. Oh, that's a card to be picked up. I thought you were raising your hand. I didn't know if I was. You have 1 minute to respond, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal, which may or may not be a rebuttal. It may be a clarification. Mary, are we okay so far? So far. All right. I think I will start out with a question for both boards. And that question, and I will pass it along to start with Tacey. What do you suggest to build better working relationships between the two boards?
Okay, 1 minute. I think that the first thing on the Board of Supervisors and the school board, one, I would note that I am a previous member of the school board. I did serve on liaison meetings with officials from both towns and the county. They're not parent-child relationships. They are peers. And I think that open and honest dialogue is important. I think it is very important to note that the school board's ultimate charge is to provide a realistic budget to the Board of Supervisors, and that they have to work in tandem. I'd like to see the budget processes working tied more closely together, but communications is key.
Right. Todd?
I like to see both boards have a few more meetings together, and I'd like to see them entangle some teachers, custodians, and all the faculty and staff to have a little committee so they could have their input of what the schools need. I think more people you have that's actually in the schools could benefit both boards, and they would have more knowledge, excuse me, more knowledge of what the students and the faculty needs.
Michael?
The school board budget represents about half of the whole county budget, so as far as I'm concerned, that should consume about half of the county business. I don't know how many liaisons there are between the Board of Supervisors and the school board right now, but as far as I'm concerned, those two bodies are just two halves of the same thing. So they go together completely, and they have to work together completely. It's not like that the school board ought to produce a budget independent of the Board of Supervisors and vice versa. If the Board of Supervisors can't explain the limitations of the budget system to the school board adequately, then they can't respond correctly with the right budget. So they have to be together. I would think that we need more supervisors to sit in with the board of the school board to make sure they're working together to achieve the same goals.
Tom?
Well, first let me say thank you for coming out tonight, for attending this event, certainly on a day that's been one of the colder ones that we've had with the wind blowing. I appreciate your being here. and I appreciate the League of Women Voters hosting this forum. Regarding relationships, I think one of the things that I would really like to do, regardless of whomever is elected in District D, is really partner with that particular person to do more community-based events. There was an event this past spring at the Reiner Volunteer Fire Department where the community came out and discussed its concerns and its ideas and its suggestions for the budget and for the school board budget. And I think because our county has a fair amount of disparity across from one end to the other, that these local events really can be a great way to gauge the true concerns of the communities and have both sides at the same time understand where those priorities lie.
Thank you. Yes, 30 seconds more.
One of the things I wanted to note is that I think that it's very good that the school board administration was finally able to consolidate to the county government center. That was something that was on the table and funded when I was on the board. Again, I left that board in 2005. The funding happened in 2001. There are various mechanisms within each school for the community to have dialogue with both boards, and there are also numerous mechanisms in place for the board to touch each employee classification and have dialogue.
Anybody else? Tom? Todd? Mike? Okay, thank you. Next, the next question is for the Board of Supervisors. What is your position regarding the Public Service Authority and its relationship to the Board of Supervisors? And we'll start with Michael on this one.
You know, the things you're going to hear from me tonight, it's going to be repetitive. It's about cooperation and strategic planning. Every aspect of civic service here in the county has got to just get on the same page. Whether it's the PSA, planning district commissions, planning commissions, school boards, whatever it is, we're not Mayberry anymore. We're sophisticated now. The population of Montgomery County now is essentially the same as the city of Roanoke. So we have to put our grown-up pants on now and act for the good of everybody. So whatever we have to do to pull everybody in to the same tent, that's what we have to do. It's just critical that we do the strategic planning and vision together.
Okay, Todd?
As I stated before, I'd like to see the Board of Supervisors and the PSA board. I would like to see that different citizens be on the PSA board so you have more input. And I do want to tell the Board of Supervisors how much I appreciate them joining the Water Authority with Virginia Tech and the rest. I mean, they should have done that years ago. It should have happened. And now, we understand that we're going to have water way up in the futures. I mean, that was a good thing that they done, but I still would like to see citizens put back on the PSA board.
Casey?
I think that the Joyner study was the right way to go. I think that it was a good response to where the county should have been initially when it had the opportunity to join in with the existing Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Virginia Tech Water Authority. The PSA was a different agency. Now it is a county department. At one point, it was so poorly managed that the Board of Supervisors actually had to come in and become the governing board of that agency. It's critical to our economic development, and it is disappointing to me that my opponent is again saying that citizens who are purchasing water now should be made to furnish the dollars for all infrastructure for the entire county. We're all in this together.
Okay. This one for our school board candidate. Describe your understanding of the Montgomery County Educational Fund, and then there's a follow-up that is Do you financially support the Montgomery County Educational Foundation? If not, why?
Sure. Well, the Montgomery County Educational Fund is a private-public partnership, really modeled after what I would describe as the Virginia Tech Foundation. The Virginia Tech Foundation is a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization that raises private money, non-taxpayer-based money, to support the mission and the activities of the operations of Virginia Tech. The Montgomery County Educational Foundation operates very much the same way. It's a private-public partnership. No tax monies are used. Students, teachers, parents, parent-teacher organizations, those involved in the educational process can apply for grants. Those grants are then awarded to recipients that help augment the educational experience. So I think it's a great program. I fully support it. In fact, I'm hopeful that it can continue to grow and succeed and even grant more private funds to continue its mission, and I would certainly be willing to lend a hand to support that wherever I could.
I don't know why this, I don't know if it's even an appropriate question. It says, do you financially support it?
Well, I actually went to a fundraiser for MCEF on Saturday evening at the Adamo Winery, so I bought 2 tickets to that event, so I guess technically, yes, I support it, and would love to attend again next year. So, yes, on both accounts.
Yeah, sometimes we dig a little deep. All right, one for both school board and board of supervisors. Interesting question. What are you doing personally to protect the environment? Let's start with Todd.
Hello. Well, the main thing is I recycle when I can. I got one vehicle, and bless its heart, it's got over 200,000 miles on it. I haven't turned my air conditioner on all summer. And about anything I can do, I guess I can. I mean, I try to do what I can because I want to leave a good footprint for my grandkids, and my sons, you know, they need a good place to live. Bless their heart. That's about all.
I'm certainly a proponent and advocate of recycling as well. Above and beyond that, I'm very aware of our carbon footprint. We try to, be wise stewards of energy and of public resources and natural resources. We use energy efficient appliances. We're not driving vehicles that are high consumption vehicles, and we certainly support above and beyond that, local practices and resources to be environmentally conscious.
All right, Tacey?
My husband, Michael, and I, we recycle at home. We've done the same thing where we've upgraded to energy efficient appliances and retrofitting part of the house, recycle, reuse, reduce our consumption. I'm also a member of 2 community supported agriculture agencies. I tried to institute a farmers market, support the establishment of a farmers market here in Christiansburg. I shop farmers markets throughout the area. And Michael and I also worked on restoring a 100-year-old building.
Good. Michael?
That's a good question. I live in the county. We recycle what we can. It's mostly newspapers and that sort of thing. The main thing we try to do, I don't have an electric car or anything like that, but I don't spend much time in it. I do try to minimize the amount of waste that we create. The main thing I would like to see happen is better access for the people outside of Blacksburg to public transport. I would take buses to Blacksburg and back if I had one to take that was convenient for me with my working hours. And I would really like to see a little expansion of that bus service.
Anybody want to add?
As a follow-up, let me just mention, I had lunch with my little girl last week at Auburn Elementary School. They've got a wonderful program where they recycle all of the cafeteria materials, including scrap food, which is put into a compost bin and then actually sold to a compost facility, I believe in Floyd, that then resells that finalized material to local farmers and throughout the state. So I would certainly support that as being something that could be rolled out in other schools as well. It's certainly a great model to copy.
Anybody else? It's interesting sitting here as a moderator and looking at these questions. Some of these have little to do as they're framed with the policy obligations that you have, but I guess everybody's looking for good citizens to be on these boards as well. All right, here's one for the supervisors. Why did the county tear down the old courthouse? Since none of you were serving on that board, I guess it's an interesting question for you to weigh in on. It doesn't ask whether they should have or not, but it said, why did they? But go ahead, Michael.
Well, my understanding is that they're not really tearing it down, they're just remodeling it to be used by, I guess, the Sheriff's Department and the Fire and Rescue, Public Service, whatever. I was somewhat surprised to see how far down they were taking. I thought remodeling meant go inside and do some things different. To see it taken down to steel was quite surprising. I'm hoping they're not taking it all the way down to ground and building it back up again, but I don't think they are. I think that's reusing buildings that we have is a good idea. I'm not sure that still qualifies as the building that it was before. I don't know if that was the right way to do that or not. If there's waste in that, I'm not informed enough on that at the moment, and at this point it's really too late to do anything about it anyway. I think preserving the site, preserving the building itself to be used for other purposes is the right thing to do with our school buildings and everything else. So I think that was not a bad thing to do as long as it was done efficiently.
Todd?
I don't know why they tore it down, but I know the reason they built a new one, the judge told them to, I reckon. But in the old courthouse that they're remodeling now is going to be the 911 central station, and that would benefit the county as a whole. I mean, that was a good decision there. And the sheriff's department, I don't know how many of you have been in the sheriff's department lately, but it was run down and they needed a new space. I mean, I think that was a good decision. I don't know if they could have saved any money just tearing it down and rebuilding something. I mean, I wasn't in on that discussion, but I'm all for reusing buildings if we can. Once they start, just like in schools, Virginia Tech's got buildings over 100 years old, but they keep them maintained. If they go back and keep these schools maintained, we wouldn't have such a big bill on brand new schools.
Tacey?
Would you restate the question again, please?
I'm sorry?
Would you restate the question again, please?
Yeah, it said, why did the county tear down the old courthouse?
Okay. All right. We know that it's going to be the future regional emergency 911. I'm not sure about the funding mechanisms, how Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, and Christiansburg, and any other participating localities are going to contribute to that. Perhaps it's because we need to have ongoing construction in downtown Christiansburg. I've seen that going on since 2001, so it's been in a state of disruption since at least that point. Yes, the judge did tell them to, however, they're not authorized to say how much you spend or when. When I was on the school board, it started out, the first proposal was $12 million for renovating that building. Then it was 16. People opposed it. The new courthouse is $19 million, and that's exclusive of communications or what we're currently seeing on the renovation downtown right now. It does position us for growth in the future.
All right, any other? All right, this one is for both groups. School security is a big concern in our country. What is your perception on where we stand in Montgomery County? And Tacey, I'm going to come right back to you with that one.
School security, unfortunately, I was at Virginia Tech on April the 16th. Personally, I was a building away from where the incident happened. We've seen issues in the headlines since then. It is serious. It is not a risk that is easy to manage. Falling Branch Elementary particularly was at risk with a lot of trespassing. I think that we need to address that. Steps have been taken. I think that the sitting board was correct in turning down the state grants for additional school resource officers. My take on that, running the numbers, was it was going to cost us $1 million ongoing to maintain that, and that there are more passive steps that we can take, but it is critical and it must be addressed.
Okay. Tom?
I think that's certainly a concern that we all share, especially a father of 2 little kids at an elementary school. I recognize the school system and the local law enforcement. They've done a number of training activities to prepare for an active shooter. They have contingency plans in place. There was a drill just at the beginning of the school year, and I applaud their work on in preparing for that and taking those steps. I think there's an opportunity where we may need to go one step farther, and that's with physical security. Some of the schools have the buzz-in systems. Some of them have other identification type systems in place that help control access. So I think looking at all of the schools and doing an assessment on the physical security side of the equation is probably a logical step to reevaluate it.
Todd?
School safety is a big concern for me. After you see all this stuff on TV and everybody says it can't happen here, but it does. It happens everywhere. And it would benefit the whole county if the board would go ahead and allocate, in which I think they have, for buzz-in keys, for SOR officers. I mean, we deal with a lot of them in the fire department. There, we communicate together, and a lot of them, they realize how important safety is to our young children, and even us. I mean, when we drop our kids off at school and we go to work, we expect them to be safe.
Thank you. Tacey?
I believe that I already responded,
Yeah,
but
sister.
if I get a chance for a rebuttal, I'll have something to say.
Okay.
So my turn.
Yes, sister.
Yeah, how about Mike? Sorry, I knew I'd get messed up here.
I think different schools, as Tom said, there probably ought to be a countywide decision that school entrance or access was the same everywhere. Some are buzz-in, some are not. I guess the problem really is, though, if you look and see what happened at Newtown, I'm pretty sure there was a buzz-in system in place there, and the guy just came in anyway. So there's nothing that we can do that's going to prevent a really bad person from doing really bad things. I think we're pretty well equipped here within the county and the state, and we've seen it unfortunately many times here, that the response that we have to such activities is rapid and overwhelming, and that is good after the fact. Once something has happened, I'm not sure what you can do to prevent crazy people from doing crazy things. But at least we ought to make sure that all of the schools have the same system to get in and out.
Okay. Tom, anything else?
Yeah, I would just like to add that perhaps also one of the last final, most critical steps that we can take, the shooting that just happened a few days ago at Sparks in Nevada, that was a student who was the shooter. And I think one of the core things that we've learned from these instances is that building a strong community within the school where students aren't afraid to come forward and speak, where there are opportunities for them to talk to a counselor or a principal about concerns that they have are critical steps. And I support some of those activities that are going on now. I think we can continue to focus on them.
Any more? Yes.
New schools, existing schools, we've had some grants that have upgraded the control of the access. Whether we're urban, rural, new, or older, we need to have the same service across. I have 2 daughters that are in education. I don't need to see them asked to pack and carry. I think as teachers, they already commit enough. But it is a serious issue, and we must address it equitably across the county.
One more thing. If my understanding was correct, at a recent board meeting, Board of Supervisors meeting, there was discussion about there was some federal money or state money available to place officers on site in certain schools, not in the towns, but I think the board decided that it wouldn't be fair to do that, so they were going to try to find money to place officers in the schools within the town limits too. Again, that's certainly a good thing to do. Whether that stops everybody from being hurt, I don't know, but at least all the schools would get the same thing.
Good. Todd?
One thing some of you may not realize, but the governor issued an order for state police, if they're in the area and they have to do paperwork, they're to pull in some school building and park in front of the building so they can be recognized, to deter anybody from trying anything that way.
Okay. Thank you. Another one for the supervisors this time. The county has been needing a new animal shelter for several years. What are your feelings on the next step? And Michael, you want to take that?
Sure. There was I guess it was a subject of, well, it was on the agenda at least at a board meeting recently. I think everybody recognized that something has to be done. I'm not sure what the resolution at the moment is, other than to try to find a way to fund it. Funding is tight for everything, but at least at the board level, I don't think there's any disagreement about the fact that a new animal shelter is necessary. It's just a matter of how and when that's going to happen.
Casey?
The animal shelter situation is pretty sad if you've been there and visited. My husband and I have a pet that was rescued. It was donated, and we were told that it was rescued. It was sent to the shelter. We were told that it would be placed. The person that placed it came back and rescued it and paid for it with $75. But I think the spay-neuter funding programs that they're doing is one thing, also working with other rescue organizations. We've got to expand it to cats. How we treat the least of our society, including the animals. And again, with disease, it becomes a health and safety issue. It's something that we have to find a way to fund.
Todd?
Well, as most of you know, I grew up around here in Montgomery County, went to school out at Auburn, and we used to go to the animal shelter when I was young, get little doggies and cats and stuff, and adopt them. That shelter was over there when I was little. It needs something, but it also needs, we need to get back to the basics. You don't have to build no fancy building for animals. I think we understand it's $3.5 million is what they're wanting. But I think if we get back to the basics, build an animal shelter, it will house the animals. And one thing we do need, and we need to push it hard, is for cats. I mean, this county don't have no control over cats. And on my campaign trail, all I hear, what you gonna do with cats?
Anybody? Okay. Let's see here. We have two questions, and this is one was identified for school board, but the second is for both. And it has to do with rollover funds, and what I presume that means is funds that are left at the end of the fiscal year. And I presume the request of, I know in other counties, the request of school boards to be able to use those funds in the coming year. And so the question is, the school board recently failed to spend any of the rollover funds, $239,000, on maintenance. Do you support or oppose this decision? So I'm gonna, if you'll give them a little bit more time here, because I'm gonna combine these questions about what is a policy regarding rollover funds, what is the function of rollover funds, and then the specific question has to do with whether it should have been spent for maintenance. I'm not sure what that issue was, but do you want to take a shot at that, Tom?
I can't. I'm not, could you clarify, make the question maybe a little bit more concise? I'm not sure exactly what the audience may be seeking.
All right, the question is, the school board recently failed to spend any of the rollover funds, $239,000 on maintenance. Presumably they spent it on something else. Do you support or oppose that decision?
Well, you know, I'm not currently a board member, so I'm not familiar with that decision. I'm not sure that that's been verified, so I'm not sure that without really having the data and the actual situation and the knowledge about the situation in front of me, I'm not sure that I can speak intelligently about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Michael?
You know, the thing is, splitting hairs over this little pot of money and that little pot of money and some other little pot of money, that's not really where we should be. What we need to be doing as a community as a whole, that means both towns, all the little unincorporated places, and the county government, they need to be working together in a strategic way to envision where we want to be somewhere down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If there are unspent funds that were estimated to be spent and they are available for rollover, for example, it needs to be worked into the big picture. It may be that maintenance wasn't required, and so you don't spend it for that. Maybe there's something more that it needs to be spent for. But to look at them individually as little pots is just not helping any. It fractures everything up, and it diverts us from looking at the big picture, where we want to be for our grandchildren. What do we want this place to look like later? So, you know, there are a lot of people in the county that, you know, need to figure out how to spend all those little dollars, but we need to be looking at the big picture.
Okay, Tacey?
Rollover funds. Imagine whatever your household budget is for the month. And at the end of the month, you got a little bit left over. And at the end of 12 months, you got so much savings. That's what the school board had, primarily from attrition, leaving positions open for a certain period of time. And at the end of the year, that was the only money that they had for capital expenses, whether it was roofing repairs, whether it was air conditioning, whether it was replacing windows that could, you know, take off a child's arm if they went and opened the window. That's what the rollover funds were. This past year, the rollover funds were more critical that they went to direct student aid for math and other remediation. I don't think that it's our position as Board of Supervisors to question where the highest and best needs for that money is, absent a well-established and funded capital improvement budget.
Okay, Todd?
Well, I had a meeting with Miss Blackburn a couple months ago. I was talking to her about the school budgets and all, and she was explaining to me she had a little over $200,000 for maintenance. That's on all the schools in Montgomery County. That's not no money. I believe if the school board comes and asks the Board of Supervisors if they got rollover money, if they got leftovers money, if they could use it, you know, what you need it for, and if they say maintenance, I'm a firm believer in that's where it needs to go. If they need it for teachers, if they need it for whatever, but the citizens need to know where their tax dollars are going. I mean, you know, that's just like if you go to the bank and you borrow money, you want to buy a car, and you buy a boat, the bank's not going to be happy with you. So the school board needs to understand when they ask for leftover monies for maintenance, that's where it needs to go. If they want to ask for leftover money for teachers or math teachers or what have you, then that's what they need to say. Be up front with us. That's what they need, an open forum.
I'll just, as a follow-up, you know, the question, as I understood it, really was about a specific example. So generally speaking, I mean, I support the use of rollover funds. Without the use of rollover funds, what you end up generally happening in organizations, and I'm not saying Montgomery County specifically, but if you have use it or lose it money, organizations always find a way to use it, and they may not use it for the, you know, the best priorities or the most pressing priorities. And so the rollover funds allow those funds to be shifted in the next budget cycle, be used then for issues that are more applicable and more priority for the community and for the organization.
Here's a question for Tom. If you had to cut from the school budget, what would you cut? And I don't know how much, but where would you start?
Well, that's like choosing between a bad chicken salad sandwich or a bad tuna salad sandwich. It's not a good choice. I think one of the things that I want to do as a school board member is really change part of the way that some of these decisions are made. I mean, I don't want to go into decision-making, especially as it relates to budget, with preconceived ideas or forming judgments based off of my own, singular personal experiences. I think what we need really is a data-driven approach where you get all of the facts, both quantitatively and qualitatively. You look at the information, you look at the decision, you force rank your priorities from 1 through whatever that number is, and then you choose the options that ultimately serve the greater good and have the least or the most impact, depending on how you look at it, for your dollar or for your cuts.
The flip side of that, for the supervisors, how do you plan to balance spending for schools without raising taxes?
The question goes to who first?
Well, I presume restated it would be how do you plan to support schools without raising taxes?
Does that go to me, sir?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
sorry.
I wanted to make sure. Too often, real estate taxes are the first go-to when there are budget deficiencies. My thing is I want to march on Richmond. I see flat and declining state funding of essential services, not just schools, but constitutional offices and also the benefits, including Virginia Retirement System Program, which was grossly underfunded for a number of years. So I think that we can look at multiple revenue sources. There's also some in personal property taxes. Mr. Warner, on the question again, how would I fund schools without raising taxes, or what would I cut?
Well, the question is how do you plan to balance spending for schools and not raising taxes, which I don't know what balancing spending, but I presume the question has to do with how would you continue to provide as much support as possible.
And one of the things that I think is also important to note is that both for public services, sheriff's department, and teachers, the state might say that we can do with a 30-to-1 ratio for students. Montgomery County funds at 18-to-1. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there, but more importantly, I think that we really have to pressure the state to come to the plate.
I think if I can back up and restate this a little different way, because I think underlying this is how would you as supervisors, what's your ideas about expanding the tax base? I think everybody is, we understand not raising taxes, but the idea of increasing school support without raising taxes is kind of a impossibility. So what kinds of things would you do as supervisors to stimulate growth in the tax base? Is that a little more direct? Yeah, and Todd, why don't I start with you and we'll come back to Stacy.
Well, your budget always starts with the economy. For one thing, the industrial park's doing extra good. I'd like to see them add another industrial park or either extend the one we have. Anytime you have good paying jobs coming in, your economy's going to grow, you keep your taxes down. And number two, she said, I'd go with the state. I'd go up to the state, try to communicate with them how their burden is coming back on us. I mean, just like one thing, fire and rescue and police department, sheriff's department all have in line of duty death benefits. State used to pay that. Now they trickled it down here to the county. So now they got to figure out how they're going to pay it. So one thing is the economy. I mean, you got to work hard to bring jobs in, not only technology jobs, but industrial jobs, and stay on the state.
Okay, Michael?
Well, there's two two parts to that question, really. Short term, we're stuck with what we have. We can only raise taxes so much. We don't want to raise taxes at all. There are needs at the school level have to be addressed. But the way we do that is the board and the board of supervisors and school board work together to figure out how the budget and the budgets from both directions come together, so that everybody, it's not like a battle between the two. They're working together to come up with the right answer short term. Long term, it's economic development. We got to attract for every new technology job created across the country, you get 4.5 new support jobs. That's retail, construction, whatever. What we want to do is enlarge the base, not raise the taxes. And we do that by, as Todd said, so we really ought to focus on economic development. The budget for the economic development department of the county hasn't increased for 15 years. And this is a whole different world than it was then. I've already, okay. I'd like to talk about that more afterwards.
Tracy, one of the things that you mentioned, given the way I asked the question, was to aggressively go back to Richmond and tell them what the problem is. Todd, I think, reinforced that. I do want to weigh in on the economic development.
If I can have 30 seconds. I agree with Mr. Miller that we must grow the pie. We must grow the economic base. And the technology jobs are certainly more attractive than retail jobs that pay minimum wage to 10. The types and quality of jobs are very important. The flat and declining money from the state is no reason for state leaders to celebrate with supposedly a state surplus. That's a false surplus. They've simply choked the county.
Yeah.
This kind of an interesting follow-up. A large portion of land in Montgomery County does not pay property taxes, but employees depend on county services or consume county services. And these would be places like Virginia Tech, Hospital, National Forest, research parks, non-taxed employment. What are your thoughts about asking these nonprofits for support? Michael.
So support's a sort of a vague term in that sense, but to me, as an economic development professional, I look at those things as tools to bring jobs in. I know that a lot of people get upset because we seem to give a lot of incentives away. If you have to give a tax incentive, for example, to a company to get them to come here, for example, Inorganic Ventures or somebody, really good companies, you give them a little bit of a tax holiday to come here. What they do is they bring 40, 50, 60 jobs with them. It's worth it in the long run. You have to look at it as an investment. Now, we also have to put performance requirements on them so they don't just get the tax breaks and then leave when they're over with. So we can do that. We can do all those things. But it's those areas that we're talking about that are not really generating the taxes, or we're not reaping the benefit of those potential taxes, we have to look at those as tools that we use to attract people who do pay taxes. And it's all about jobs.
Restate the question for me, please. I want to make sure I understand it.
The question has to do with the fact that there are untaxed employment opportunities in our county, Virginia Tech and others.
All right, CRC and all that. Well, every municipality in Southwest Virginia is going to have untaxable land, whether it's from national forests, whether it's from government offices. If you're on federal land and you do something stupid, you're breaking a federal law and you're going to deal with them, but we do have reciprocal agreements with other law enforcement, and so there is a drain on the resource. I agree, though, that you have to look at Virginia Tech to say that it is a drag on our economy, to me would be a false statement. That national forests are a drag on our economy or a false statement because of the contribution that they make for tourism and other types of tax revenues that we get from people that simply visit, go, don't use the schools.
Yeah, Todd?
I think one thing the board of supervisors could do is go GSI and figure out how much land it is untaxed that the state owns and the federal government owns. Get in contact with them, have a liaison, go to them, show them how much money the taxpayers are losing here in Montgomery County, even though it does benefit. It does benefit Montgomery County, but right now we need tax revenue. It wouldn't do you no good, and I'm not trying to be mean or nothing, but it wouldn't do you no good to go to tech, because the town of Blacksburg done tried that to get food tax, and they run them off. I mean, so the best time to talk to a politician about taxes and all is election year. So you can go to somebody that's running for governor and tell them, look, this is what we're missing out on, and we need your help. Are you going to help us?
Mike, rebuttal? I saw you shaking your head.
Well,
Or extension of...
Not shaking exactly. I mean, we're all sort of saying similar things. Going to Richmond to ask for things like this, they already know what's going on. It's not like it's a secret or anything, and they're not going to change anything. We need to take control of our own destiny here, and we need to use the resources we have available and leverage them in the ways that make the most sense to get the employment up. Virginia Tech is a wonderful engine for technology jobs. I don't think we're using it well enough. There are lots of opportunities for us to expand technology jobs, and we should be looking to do that.
Okay. I'm getting lots and lots of questions here. There are 2 or 3 of them that have to do with the issue of building new facilities rather than renovating. I think, Todd, there was something you mentioned earlier about that. Let me see if I can kind of bunch these. There's been a move away from renovating schools, or at the very least, reusing land with good locations, instead erecting new schools on new land far away from town centers, not allowing students to walk or bike to school, degrading the sense of community. Okay, that's one observation. Another is, why does the county insist on building new schools on the outskirts of town rather than renovating old buildings, more centrally located? They must be sitting next to each other. Now that this has happened in Blacksburg already, there is rumor about doing the same thing to Christiansburg, moving out to 114. There's probably another one in there, but I guess I would toss it first to Tom. And then to the Board of Supervisors, the question of what do you think of that?
Sure. Well, you know, I think at the essence of the question really is about having a long-term vision. And I think you're finding some of these inconsistencies in our capital improvement side, you know, whether it's a campus design or whether it's a rebuild or a remodel or a new location or an existing location, in part because we're making these decisions somewhat in isolation. And I think if we had more of a strategic, long-term, comprehensive vision, specifically on what our capital improvement projects are going to be and when they're going to occur and which ones are the top priorities, we might have a little bit more uniformity in some of those projects going forward, and that's what I would advocate for.
Michael?
You know, I'm actually one who likes to see the buildings renovated rather than torn down. On the other hand, in modern times, modern schools attract businesses, and you can't put a modern school in the footprint of a one that was 40 years old. So there's a question about what you can do. And I know in Christiansburg, they've saved the old Christiansburg Middle School, and luckily they did because they used it for Blacksburg. I like repurposing them. If they can't be used for schools, they can be repurposed for other things, libraries, community centers, even in commercial areas. But I think there are times when, you know, that decision maybe hasn't been made as well as it could have been. But I do know that we have to have attractive educational system here, whatever that means today, in order to bring those jobs in, because there are people who stay away if they don't see the right kind of school.
Todd?
I respectfully disagree with you on the 40-year-old building. As I said before, Virginia Tech's got buildings over almost 100 years old. You can go out and you can remodel them. You can put high technology in them. It'd be a whole lot cheaper most of the time to remodel. But the main thing is to keep the maintenance up on them. You can go out here and spend a little bit of money now or spend a lot just like we just done, $125 million. And as far as putting them in the towns and all, well, you see what we're going through now with the town of Blacksburg trying to sell the old middle school. I mean, how long we been fighting that thing? I think if they could get coordinated and move renovate the schools, that'd be wonderful. But we need to stay on time. I mean, we kept putting things off, putting them off, and now look where we're at. We had the highest tax rate increase that Montgomery County has ever had.
I've done renovation, I've done new construction. Renovation can be higher cost than new construction. Some buildings cannot be retrofitted. We are currently, right now, sitting in a wonderful example of a retrofit. This building, this used to be a factory, but it's not yet at 100% capacity. Growth. We've seen significant growth during the last two census in Blacksburg, Christiansburg, and Montgomery County, and there is simply not land available in large enough portions to put schools in the center of neighborhoods, and the developments didn't even include for that, much less sidewalks here in Christiansburg. So when you're talking about moving to the outskirts of Christiansburg, you're alluding to the park on 114. That's a strategy by the town of Christiansburg to come back and sell part of that land for schools. There are, Christiansburg Elementary School just celebrated its 50th birthday, and there's land adjacent to it. We can have a large campus there. Too much for me to say on that one, but there's some hot buttons for me.
Any additional thoughts?
I mean, I agree. As I said, I like to see the buildings renovated when possible. The high school building that my father went to up in West Virginia, the town that I went to school in, that he went to in the 40s, is still there and it's still being used, but it doesn't have a gym and it doesn't have a cafeteria. So there are things that modern education acceptable practices require that are not necessarily possible in a renovation. They might be, but they may not be. And the land is the biggest problem. You have to expand the footprint, and there's just not always land in the middle of the town to do it anymore.
Tom?
Yeah, as a final note, I mean, I think the new Auburn Middle School really is a prime example of that. The core structure is being remodeled. Over the years, that building is 75 years old. They've demolished the portions that were ironically newer, but not in quality condition. But the core part of the building is being remodeled. They're adding on to it. It's the same parcel of land. It's part of the campus environment with the new high school and the elementary school. So I think that's probably a good example of good planning and being effective with our capital projects.
Any other comments on that?
The only thing I would ask the audience to think about is that Christiansburg, the old Christiansburg High School, the old Blacksburg High School, which became middle schools, Christiansburg is still standing. It just housed the Blacksburg Middle School. And ask yourself, why was one building able to be maintained and the other one was demolished? There were reasons for that.
All right, here's one for the supervisors. Do you think the county supervisors, should offer incentives to the developer of Midtown Village, the old Blacksburg Middle School property?
Say it again.
Do you think the county supervisors, should offer incentives to the developers of Midtown Village, the old Blacksburg Middle School property? I presume, that's a kind of, there are incentives offered for certain kinds of development, and this is a question specifically about the development of that site. Do you think it's kind of yes or no? Yeah, Michael?
Well, incentives is sort of a broad term also. I favor public-private partnerships. We want developers to make money because that's how we get things built. And if we don't give them an opportunity to make money, we don't get anything built. On the other hand, we can't let them make all the money and leave us holding the bag. What we need to do is find ways to cooperate with, it's not just the county, I mean the town as well. That's the big problem right now, really, is that the town and the county are a little bit at odds over how the property ought to be used. Maybe not so much how it ought to be used, but when it ought to start. And that was an avoidable situation. It could easily have been avoided if, again, they got together in the same room and worked together and forgot about the fact that part of us are in Blacksburg and part of us are in Christiansburg and part of us are in the county. Whatever is good for one of us is good for all of us. And we have to have that, we have to develop that attitude about it and work together to accomplish those goals. So again, public-private partnership is better than an incentive as far as I'm concerned.
Todd.
I think the county ought to offer some incentives, but if it's in the town of Blacksburg, I think they ought to work with the town of Blacksburg, get incentives from them. I promote anything that would bring in jobs to Montgomery County right now. Incentives, but you got to watch when you do incentives, because if you give Joe over here incentive to do this, well then when Charlie comes in, he's going to say, look what you done for Joe, you're going to do extra for me. But I'm all for giving incentives, but you have to delegate how it's done. And if there's a town of Christiansburg or a town of Blacksburg's involved, if the land's in either one of them, I think they need to be involved and help incentive to bring jobs to Montgomery County, because as he said, what benefits Blacksburg, what benefits Christiansburg, benefits the whole county. The county as a whole. As I tell everybody, you know, that's my neighbor. Well, he lives over there in Pilot. He's still my neighbor.
Tacey.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Here's one that I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is really fair for candidates who haven't been in the position. But it says, do you support the school board's decision to spend $88,000 on a redistricting study? You know, that's like whether we should have let Mr. Thomas throw that pass the last quarter. Anyway, any thoughts about that? That was, what, 2 years ago now? Tacey, you want to?
When I was on the school board, the R word was not one you wanted to bring up. And having an outside consultant gives some credibility for the wider community as well as community engagement and partnerships. That's a big price to pay at a time that the budgets are so strict, and we have a wonderful transportation database that can compute fuel consumption, how long a child is on a bus to school, away from. I think that we could have done that. I think if we're going to spend $88,000, we should have gotten serious about whether or not we could have gotten any real shifts that would take off the burden of overcrowded schools.
Todd.
Out flat, no, I don't think they should have spent that. If I remember right, they spent a little over $1,000 per student moving from one school to another. The budget of the school is over 60% of the whole county budget. There's somebody in this administration that can do that job themselves. I mean, that's what we're paying them for. I understand if you're going out here to find a superintendent of the school, but when you spend over $1,000 a student just to move them from one side of the road to the other, it don't take rocket scientists to figure if this student goes to this school, it's 2 miles easier for him or her, we'll put them on the bus and send them there.
Tom.
Sure. You know, I think really the essence of this question is about using resources wisely and appropriately. You know, I'm frugal by nature. I'm the only candidate running, I think, for any office that has homemade yard signs. I went to Lowe's and negotiated a discount on bent plastic board and spray painted them myself. So I naturally come towards things with the idea that, you know, I'm going to turn a penny over twice before I spend it. That said, I'm not sure that it's fair to be a Monday morning quarterback. I wasn't involved in that decision. I don't have the data that influence making that decision one way or the other. But my approach would be data driven. So whether or not we're faced with that decision again about spending $80,000 for a study, I think I would go back to my model, look at the formula for governance, and say, essentially, what does the data say that we need to do? Let's analyze this both quantitatively and qualitatively and decide whether or not it's a good use of funds to spend.
Yeah, Michael?
I guess the $88,000 figure sounds like a lot of money, but in some cases, if you don't spend some money like that with some outside experts, the local people don't believe that it was done fairly. So sometimes that's what you have to do. Whether $88,000 is necessary, I don't know. But they didn't do anything about it when they finished, as far as I know. I don't know that they moved any kids anywhere. The big problem, I think, is that we need to break some boundaries down here. I know that before that study was ever even finished, I think there were some folks in some of the neighborhoods who thought they might be moved out of one district into another and got kind of crazy about it and kind of went off and tried to sabotage the whole thing. Everybody in the county ought to be getting the same education. Now, that may not be true, but we need to make it true. And there are some, locality issues and that sort of thing, and where your friends live and everything, but, if everybody got the same deal everywhere across the county, then where they went, here or there, shouldn't matter that much, and then we could do something about the redistricting study.
All right, Tacey, follow up?
Yes, please. I agree with Tom that it's not really fair to be an armchair quarterback in this situation, and it could be that the outcome showed that the school system was already as efficient as it could be, that the boundaries were right for the student populations and there would be higher costs without doing it. But saying that the county's budget is 60% going to schools is incorrect, in that it is including state and federal dollars that are pass-through dollars if we did not spend them as they were designated. So our true local tax rate is about 47% of the local dollars for schools. 60% it's everything state and federal, and if you pulled out the state and federal and didn't spend it on schools, we wouldn't have those monies anyhow.
Go ahead, Michael.
If they spent $88,000 and got a study that said, yeah, you're doing just fine, they didn't need to do that study. I think pretty much, that would be obvious.
All right, what thing, kind of finishing where we started, what things would you do to improve relationships between county and town governments and to ensure healthy, open communications between them? It's for the Board of Supervisor candidates. Todd.
Well, I had a few meetings with some town council members and the town manager. Way they told me everything's in good. I mean, they get along with the county board of supervisors, the county administrator, and I'd just like to see more citizens partake into going to these meetings and see how everything operates, and citizens get more involved. But like I said, the way I understand, everything's going good.
Michael?
I think they're all friendly with each other and all that, but when it comes to accomplishing things, you look at the old Blacksburg Middle School property and see that there's a breakdown somewhere. And I think that breakdown, in my opinion, was substantially on the county side. But again, that's, the board's got to deal with that in real time, so I'm not going to comment on that too much. But what we can do to get the towns and the county working together better is to have collaborative projects where the county works with the town to get something done, rather than tossing things over the fence at each other all the time. Again, we need to do long-term strategic planning about what the whole county needs to look like in the future. And the towns are critical to that, as the county is, but also the villages. Everybody's got to be involved in that to see how are we going to go forward 20 years from now. And when you're on the same page with that, you don't have those kinds of problems as much. So the first step to that would be to find ways so that the county can help the towns, rather than staying at arm's length.
Tacey, did I ask you that question?
No, sir. There are a lot of liaison meetings between what I call the CEO and the chairs of the boards. There's also a lot of collaboration with department heads, whether it's human resources, police, public information, engineering. They already have good dialogue and relationships with each other. I think what is key is that each locality, municipality, staff on up to the leadership respect each other as peers, recognizing that we share common goals, focusing on them, and as Mr. Miller said, we've got common goals. Let's look at the projects that we can collaborate on where everybody benefits. And again, we're growing the economic pie and we're minimizing redundancies and resources.
Okay. We're fast approaching the 8:15 time where the candidates will be able to give a 2-minute presentation. Mary Huska, who has been primarily responsible for organizing this, has done a nice job of scripting things, but we've worked together long enough to know that, so that she knows I don't always follow the script. I'm sitting here with about 5 or 6 other really interesting questions, and what I'm going to do is read the questions and then ask, not all of you to comment, but ask you to pick out anyone you'd like to talk about for your minute and a half. The first one is, you might want to take notes here. The first one is essentially, we're spending a lot of money on schools. Should we be spending less or spending more? The second one is the Board of Supervisors one. It has to do with working with the Virginia Department of Transportation on road design. Roundabouts, how would you work more effectively or more closely with them? There's another one that talks about how the city-county annexation things have been in moratorium for years and years. How would you work with town councils in the city of Radford regarding boundary adjustments, annexation, city status, or reversion? Here's a kind of a really difficult one Tom can sign in on. School board meetings are scheduled the same nights as Christiansburg Town Council. Is this a problem? If so, what would you recommend? So if I'll just kind of go around, I'll go to Tom first because I think that's
Sure.
and don't say Christiansburg should change their meetings.
Well, you know, the school board meets twice a month. I believe the town council meets twice a month. So the logical solution there would just be to stagger them so that they're not meeting on the same Tuesday, that one meets on the first Tuesday and one meets on the second Tuesday, and then citizens can attend any and all the meetings that they desire. That seems like a straightforward approach that, you know, it doesn't cost any taxpayer money, it doesn't create any additional demands for resources or space, and could be a win-win for everybody involved.
Yes, what would you like?
On the conflicting meetings, absolutely. The elected school board is something that is relatively new and should align to the Board of Supervisors' schedule. So I think that it would be very gracious of the town of Christiansburg if they would blink first. This is something that I asked about when I was on the school board, left the school board specifically so I could attend town of Christiansburg meetings. City-county status, moratorium, annexation. If anybody wants to talk about city status for either of the towns or the towns combining, one of the first things I want is a fair and accurate market assessment of the school assets, because those wouldn't just automatically convey. VDOT road designs, roundabout, working more closely. Absolutely, I'd like more information from VDOT, particularly on work orders that they receive from the town. I do not see those in Board of Supervisors meetings. Dollars on school, more or less, absolutely more, and it should come from the state.
Todd.
Well, on the VDOT, I think out here at exit 109, they're discussing now to put a roundabout out there, and it's a partnership with the VDOT and the people that owns the property in the county. I think that's a good way to do it. If you're going to work with public and private sectors, everybody needs to have a voice in it, and like I said, you know, there's several of them out there that's going to put money into it to get the roundabout in. As far as money for the schools, you know, like I said, you know, $125 million is a lot of money, but what we need to do is sit down with the school board and look in the future. I think that's what happened. They didn't look past or played here. They need to look in the future. You know, Auburn's been hauling for a new school for years. Christiansburg is coming up for a new school. They need a new school. Christiansburg does. I'd like to find out, you know, where the county and the school board is on that deal.
Michael?
Okay, aside from the issue about the overlapping meetings, all of the other things that you mentioned there, again, are solvable through vision and strategic planning, long-term thinking, and collaboration among everybody, all the elements in the county. I really, really strongly feel that the county needs a master plan. You know, the towns have master plans on it. This county needs a master plan, and not just for our county, but for this region. You know, we're leaders of this whole Southwest Virginia region, and we need to step up and act like it. But we do that by forgetting that some people live in Christiansburg and some in Blacksburg and some in Reiner and some in Shawsville, whatever. We all live in Montgomery County and we all live in Southwest Virginia. And we need to construct this place the way we want it to be. And all these other things are just implementation issues. And they go away when everybody's on the same page. And so that's where we need to focus.
Well, this brings us to the conclusion of the question and answer session. There's still a couple of items here that we didn't get to. I appreciate all of you taking the time and your thoughtful responses. Now you have the opportunity to make a 2-minute closing, and we'll start with Tom.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's hard to give a lot of depth of information in a 1-minute time frame, so I prepared some written remarks. Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, for the audience for your participation. I believe the last 4 years have been consumed with challenges that have really distracted our focus on student performance and academics, athletics, and the arts, and has further precipitated decision-making without a strong focus towards comprehensive strategy. I believe we can do better, and it's time for new energy and new ideas, and that's why I'm running for school board. I want to improve the formula by which policy decisions are made and place an emphasis on long-term planning. My policy approach won't rely on personal experiences or preconceived ideas, but rather on facts and figures and applicable quantitative and qualitative data. This evidence-based approach will help ensure board decisions are addressing the strategic issues of MCPS, enable information sharing amongst the public, and develop sustainable, consistent improvements across schools and all of our strands. I believe we must continue to improve student performance. I support professional development and key insight initiatives designed to both share and acquire best practices, both internally and externally, while building a sustainable and enduring culture of quality and excellence at every school across the county. I recognize that in today's environment, we have limited resources, and in the challenge to improve student performance, standardizing what works across the county can help us be both more efficient and more effective. Just like many of our local leading corporations that are ISO certified, developing consistent standards can help us promote a more integrated and coherent MCPS and encourage year-over-year improvements and develop a long-term strategy of excellence. I recognize that economic disparity in our community is great. I believe we need to find win-win approaches. I'd like to build a better advocacy that involves all the stakeholders and engages people in the planning, transparency, communication, and funding of our educational priorities. Thank you again. I appreciate your interest. I look forward to November 5th.
Thank you. Tacey, why don't you go ahead and lead off?
I'm a planner, and my approach to my 2-minute summation was kind of driven on I would be listening to what I said for the evening so it would be relevant to the topic. When I heard that I could not participate, I kind of dropped that. So as a planner, I lost it. But thank you to all the sponsors, volunteers, and participants this evening. It's very much appreciated to be here. I believe that you lead through vision, not division. Not division. We have to work better with the towns, with the school boards, within our departments. We have to work better with our regional partners here in what's defined as the New River Valley. And this goes on throughout Southwest Virginia, from Lexington to Wytheville. and having those long-term plans where we're working together and we're not competing with one another. The Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan says that 3 of the primary responsibilities of board members is stewardship of resources, participatory planning, and regionalism. And I think I just talked on that, on what I want to focus on. You look at your resources, you have no redundancies, you have a long-term plan, and you work with regional partners. You don't have this division. We have to focus on economic growth. We have to husband what resources we have. We cannot count on the state or the federal government to provide us the resources that we need to have locally. Given that that's the comprehensive plan, stewardship of resources, participatory planning, and regionalism, what I would say is that's the comprehensive plan, takes us to the future. When a team does not execute a plan, voters should change the team rather than the goals. So I would ask you to support me on November 5th, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tacey. Todd, you go ahead and lead off. These are 2 of the 3 candidates for the Board of Supervisors, and I'm happy to go from here.
I'd like to tell everybody how much I appreciate you coming out on this cold, windy night. I'd like to see Montgomery County move towards the future. As I said earlier, the school system, we had to raise taxes, the highest Montgomery County has ever raised right now. People's hurting out there. The economy is not as good as some places. I mean, I go out to Reiner Food Center and Shell Station every night. If you ever want to run into me, you come out there at 9:30, 9:45, I'm down at Shell Station getting a cookie. I sat there on Thursday night and I seen several people, young people and middle-aged people come out there. They come in and get gas, get $2 or $3 worth of gas just to make it work on Friday, get their paycheck. I'd like to see us extend our economic industrial. I like to see us go out here and court industries out there, manufacture jobs. If somebody's out of work, they go out and look for a job. And I think that is the job of the Board of Supervisors, to go out and look for jobs. Pulaski, look at their good news up there. How many jobs have they created just here in the last couple of weeks? I'm not saying nothing bad about the Board of Supervisors. I'm just saying they do a good job, but I think we can do better. Christiansburg, as I brought up before, Christiansburg's going to need a new school from now. It ain't going to be long, they're going to need one. We spent several $1,000s up there patching it up. They're going to need a new school. I'd just like to see a further future plan come out of Montgomery County. And as I said, I want to tell all the board members, school board and Board of Supervisors, how much I appreciate what time they do put into this job. Thank you.
Michael?
I also like to thank League of Women Voters for putting on this event and for everybody coming out tonight. In the 1960s, Marshall Hahn became the president of Virginia Tech, and he had a vision to take that small school of a few thousand cadets and make it something better. And he put into motion a plan to make that happen, and because of that, he changed Montgomery County forever. When I came to this area in 1977, Virginia Tech had about 15,000 students. Blacksburg and Christiansburg were basically hamlets. And now Tech is twice the size that it was then and continues to grow. And the population of the county is about the same as the city of Roanoke. As much as we like to tout our small town, special place culture, we're actually a much more sophisticated community than we often realize ourselves, I think. But the culture of our civic leadership has not really aligned itself with this growth and emerging economy. Up to now, I think we've pretty much been, by and large, just hanging on to the Virginia Tech rocket and hoping that good things happen. And good things do happen. But we're approaching a time when we need to lead this region in all aspects of civic and public life. We cannot do that unless we imagine what we want our future to look like and then make plans together to make it happen. Building the future requires resources, and too often we see the expenditures as a drain rather than an investment. Our job as civic leaders is to guide the community to the vision than help create the opportunity to make it happen. I want to cheat here just a minute and show you something. You probably can't see this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. This is my granddaughter, Wendy. She'll be 18 months old on Election Day, and I want her to be able to grow up in this community and do the same things that her mother did. And if she wants to stay here when she gets grown up and wants to launch out in the world, if she wants to do great things from here, I want her to have a chance to do that. And it's our job to create a community where she can do that.
Thank you, Michael. I want to thank Tom, Michael, Todd, and Tacey for appearing here tonight. And I want to thank Joey and Sherry and then for offering up yourself to provide the kind of service to a community. These jobs don't pay very much. You take a lot of heat, and you just need to know that we appreciate your willingness to do that. I'd like also to thank my colleagues in the League of Women Voters who picked up the cards, screened the cards, timed the speakers, and everybody else. And so, having said that, again, we appreciate you being here. Let's give everybody here, including the people who came out tonight, a big round of applause.